music multiverse listeners, and welcome back to Beyond Your Radio. This is Unknown Sundays. It's time to talk about another band, artist, or something in the music multiverse that might be relatively unknown to some, missed. Our watchers, collectors, listeners might be interested in a rabbit hole to go down, whether it's from the past and the present. Please remember that this is an extension of our article section of beyondyourradio.com. So if you want the details there and links, it's there for today's show. One of the very first albums I secured as a gift for Christmas was Duran Duran's Arena, and that was 1984. It was about this time that my addiction for purchasing might have began. Yeah, I was 12, but, you know, I was earning money, and once I had my double cassette detachable speaker boombox, well, it was time to start that, you know. I was getting away from the 8 tracks, and obviously records were just too large and bulky, and they weren't going to play in the car. It was the king of formats in vinyl. You know, it was still there, but just not as prevalent. The album, of course, featured the 80s new wave rock guitar made popular by Andy Taylor, as well as the groove bassist John Taylor, which gave Duran Duran a certain height over the new wave competition. I would probably say that they were one of the biggest, most exciting bands on the planet. Kind of think of Coldplay of their time, but with a Vogue fashion sense in the scope of their popularity. They embodied the era as well as many of its spirits. When they finished touring 7 Songs for 7 Tigers, a minor hiatus would put 2 Taylors and a microphone, with the soloist groove crooner being that microphone, to where it was all at. This is the Power Station on Unknown Sundays. I mean, who wasn't a fan of Robert Palmer, the solo groove crooner? This guy, this singer, a double-breasted suit coat, sophisticated delivery, and later on even apologizes for turning the ladies on. I mean, who does that? It was like Clive Davis's wet Sinatra Bowie dream. Duran Duran was smitten with it too, so much in fact that in the planned hiatus, the band split into 2 projects. And this was the one the Taylors followed, while Simon, Nick, and the drummer Roger Taylor went on to a side project called Arcadia, which included a boatload of guest musicians from anywhere from Sting, Herbie Hancock, Grace Jones, and David Gilmour. How that didn't sink any musical ships around it is beyond me. That was a one and done. So Robert Palmer steps up to the mic. Andy Taylor lays down the riffs and wild out guitar work, while John Taylor slaps the bass. And the most underrated part of this supergroup, at least in the eye of the overall music multiverse, and ear if you haven't heard, is Anthony Theodore Thompson. Anyone who was listening to Duran Duran and Robert Palmer at the time might not have had the kind of knowledge of the depth of how funky this drummer was and truly what he was going to be capable of in this new wave format, but pushing it into a rock format. But there's no question that Robert Palmer and bassist Bernard Edwards, who was also brought in on the project from Chic, knew what they were getting into. So where does this all start? A cover song of T-Rex, but not for this band. See? You're learning something. They were getting together to kind of provide like a backing vocal or band to Playboy model, wannabe singer, B.B. Bile. Yes, this was the model and love interest of Todd Rundgren, and then again at Steven Tyler. Yes, she is the mother of Liv Tyler, in case you wanted to know that tidbit. Boyfriend at the time? Yep, you guessed it, John Taylor. So here's him, Rick Derringer, Rick Ocasek, and basically the Cars, and this T-Rex song. In comes the funky horns, the drumming that comes from the band Chic, Edwards and Thompson, encouraging the Duran Duran boys to separate from that synth attack that was Duran Duran and hard-on rock, fusion, and funk. The Taylors obviously agreed, but also knew they wanted to rock out into older, heavier rock in a Zeppelin range, too. The rest is definitely the signature of the Power Station and their debut record, which features that T-Rex cover in their complete control. So, knowing that there's not a singer in the group, at that time, because Robert Palmer is not in the mix here at this moment. They kind of thought guest musicians, sort of doing what Arcadia was doing. Um, but when they brought in Robert Palmer, because of their love for Robert Palmer at the time, what did he sing on Communications, I think, or Communication? He kind of says, let me hear the other tracks or something like that. I want to try to sing on everything else. And by that time, the band knew that that's what they wanted to do, was have him. So this is the Power Station, and this would be the album that would grip radio. It's got remixes of all kinds, throwing all kinds of attention to the band, whether they wanted it or not, individually, solo-wise. They also pretty much settled on the genius of Bernie Edwards to produce the record incompletely. And his fingers on the pulse of the band for sure. He would pass in 1996, which would, in fact, be the time that the Power Station finally came back together for their sophomore record, Living in Fear, which this is a hard record to come by. So, and obviously didn't do that well, but this was 1996. So, you know, you got to be a music fan to be in on this, and people will probably poo-poo this, but this is not poo-poo. Anyway, getting away from that for a second, there's a lot that happens in 1 year's time with these fine, funky rock fellas, we'll call them, which pretty much made it basically impossible for them to exist further on down the album's road. Robert Palmer kind of got a boost from it all. So he actually brought some of the gang in to help record Riptide, which took off, forced him to drive back to a solo touring in 1986 to satisfy that explosion. Remember, he didn't mean to turn you on, but I think he did. And he got the help of the Power Station's Andy Taylor, Bernard Edwards, and of course, Mr. Thompson on the drums, as well as Lenny Pickett. So this is the Power Station's influence outside of that Duran Duran, from a recording session that started with a Playboy model. It's crazy, right? But it doesn't stop there either. Even when Robert Palmer has to leave the band during basically what's touring, I think at the time, he's replaced with an actor-singer, Michael Des Barnes, who was friends with Don Johnson, which gets the band on the show Miami Vice. But then again, at that time, who wasn't on Miami Vice when it came to that music? Yes, let's tap over to Phil Collins for a second, because Phil Collins and Tony Thompson have an arrangement as well, because they both got to drum for Led Zeppelin and Live Aid. Oh, and this Mr. Thompson guy, did you know that his percussive style, his beat manifesto and command of the drums was actually the choice for the replacement of the king of the drums? I don't name drop, but it's true. Had it not been for a car crash that would kind of destroy that timeline, the music multiverse sucks sometimes. Sorry, Deb. I want to clarify something too, as this Thompson thing can get a little misconstrued. Tony Thompson is whom I'm speaking of, and he did play with Phil Collins, kind of trade drummings for that monumental live reunion of Led Zeppelin. He is not Chester Thompson, who drummed with Genesis so that Phil could be Phil from time to time, or they could drum together. That's another great Thompson of the Thompsons and Thompson, not the Thompson twins. Oh, dear God, that's another unknown Sunday we could go down. Tony Thompson was going to be John Bonham's replacement. Just deal with that. Just put that in your head for a second. His work with all kinds of bands, artists, and musical styles over his career and lifetime is an astounding achievement, and definitely puts him in the need of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame acceptance. The band Chic is in the Dance Hall of Fame, but he's much more than that. His bandmates, of course, of which only Duran Duran is in. That's right, not even Robert Palmer. Chic has actually been nominated for the Hall 11 times and still has not made it in. Just to give you a list of Tony Thompson's experience. LaBelle. Gee, I wonder who was in that band as the lead singer. Patti LaBelle, of course. Chic. Sister Sledge. Oh, there's a band. Whew. Doesn't get any bigger in R&B than that. Diana Ross. Huge. Rod Stewart. He played with that on the Out of Order album, which technically, besides Rod Stewart's early album, Greatest Hits and stuff, that's one of the albums that took him again into the stratosphere. David Bowie, he's played live with. Debbie Harry, Mick Jagger, Madonna. That's right. That's his drums on Like a Virgin most of the time. Obviously, the Power Station. Robert Palmer. Duran Duran even. And Distance, which had 3 songs featured in Whoopi Goldberg's Burglar. That album is actually available, and you can listen to it. In just this small window of 1 year, the Power Station and its members kind of infiltrated a multitude of bands, projects, solo careers, as well as performed on Saturday Night Live, which some bands have been around for decades still have yet to perform on. They reunite in 96 with Living in Fear, which is a decent record, and, 10 years, 11 years later, does a very good job of holding the line.
You know, I think that you're boss. Let's work out some middle ground. I see heads or tails and then toss. Power tripping and we're taking turns. The things you want to teach, you need to learn.
Giving it a bit here and there, but holding the traditions of Edwards, how he would play and how he figured the band would be. There's enough there, but the timing and the era, only holds nostalgia for people like myself and probably those that had that small window of music in 1985. This is 84, 85, 86, which actually includes Arnold Schwarzenegger's Commando, which features We Fight for Love, which apparently didn't make the album cut, or they wrote it just after for a special Schwarzenegger's Commando. Either way, the heat was on in that time frame, and they were just one of those more special collaborations to come out of the 80s that had a bit more going on than you might have originally heard or thought possible. Power Station albums, I obviously have both. The Power Station in 1985 and Living in Fear in 1996. What did you think of the Power Station? The greatness of Tony Thompson, as well as Robert Palmer and the Taylors of Duran Duran, the Hall of Fame snubs, etc., etc. This is a massive rabbit hole of musicianship that you can enjoy on all types of levels. Please comment, leave us a note or two. Please click the like button if you like what you like, leave what you don't. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. I'll see you next week for Matmos on Unknown Sundays. We're on the web at beyondyourradio.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, of course. We couldn't do without YouTube. We've got the articles, we got videos, podcasts, just days away. Albums, bands, artists, anything we can get our hands on. That's our goal. Go Beyond Your Radio with us, a real music appreciation channel. As always, thank you for watching and happy listening.